people are surprised when you say you've written a book. First of all, so many people have been like, oh, I started writing a book or whatever. And then they're even more surprised when they like it. And they're like, oh, you actually are good at this. I didn't know that was a skill you had.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Author Adjacent, a show about the journey from hobbyist writer to professional author. I'm your host, Michael Vadney, and today I am sitting with Sam Paisley, author of The Winds of Change. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Michael, everyone watching, it's good to see you all. Well, good to see you, Michael, and everyone else there can pretend.
Everyone in the future will be seeing us. So right now they are a ghost audience, and we adore them for being here. Thank you, ghosts. But today, we're mostly just going to be shooting the shit, just going through some things, talking about your journey from writer to author. And people come back next week. We will have Sam back on, where we'll be digging into a particular subject that was near and dear to his heart. And I'm actually very excited to get into because I thought it was wonderful. But for this episode, what I wanted to start with is, why don't you give the people a little blurb about who you are and the wonderful book that you wrote?
Sure. So I am an author from Toronto, Canada, and I spent a long time writing my book. So for those of you out there who are like, should I start this journey? Should I not? I spent 10 years writing my debut book. Started in about end of 2014 and published in 2023. So, 9.5-ish years. Basically went on a journey of really wanting to learn the craft, master the craft. Stories played a really important part in my life growing up and to this day, and that will lead into the topic for next week. So I wanted to build a world and a story that I could share with the world, similar to the ones that I grew up in, similar to, Star Wars and Avatar: The Last Airbender and Stargate and Supernatural and the video games I love to play. And so that was kind of the start of my journey, and it took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of stumbling, but eventually you climb that mountain. And what it resulted in was book one of a planned trilogy. So I knew I wanted to do a trilogy from the beginning, which I don't recommend for a debut author, because I was like,
That's
I want to do a
trilogy.
And I mostly want to do a trilogy because Star Wars was a trilogy and Back to the Future was a trilogy. And so, I thought it was a nice, healthy number. But regardless, I ended up publishing my first book. The series is called The Elements of Time, The Winds of Change, book number 1 right here. This is actually the special edition.
The special edition is so beautiful, too. Like, the colors pop so well. It's a really good job.
There's a lot in here. I do have some on my website. I'm not sure. So this is the cover for book 1, The Winds of Change. And as far as the special editions go, I did a limited run. I did a Kickstarter last year, and I did a limited run re-release for the 2-year anniversary, which just happened end of July. And I've got under 10 copies left on my website. By the time this airs, they might be gone. It's hard to say, but there's also some tariff shenanigans coming back into place, so I might not be able to ship them anyways. But if you want to grab one, check my website. I'm sure all the details will be there, and I'm going to try to make them available if I can. Regardless, back to the story itself. So the Elements of Time is the series. Book 1, The Winds of Change, is really a story about what it means to grow up, taking responsibility for yourself and your actions. And it centers around 2 main characters, Cooper and Reed, who are just about to graduate high school. For those who are interested, it's not a young adult book, even though the protagonists are technically young adults, like by the definition of their age. They're like 17, 18. However, really, I wanted to write something that could be enjoyed by literally anyone of almost any age. Obviously, not every book's going to be for everyone, but if you enjoyed watching the original Star Wars trilogy, or if you enjoyed watching Avatar: The Last Airbender, or any of the things I just mentioned, this book would hopefully be up your alley. And really wanted to centralize the themes around, what it means to properly take responsibility for the things that are ahead of you, and then wrap that around, adventure across the cosmos and with powers and with really cool bombastic events, but really grounded themes and grounded characters. So happy to jump more into the story, but that's kind of where my 10-year journey took me to publishing.
No, that's fantastic, and we'll try to keep it as like spoiler free as we can and stuff
Yes.
like that. Don't want to ruin it for the potential readers. And seriously, if those deluxe copies are still online, go get them, go check them out because they're absolutely stunning. We were talking about it earlier on the before the show started. Adrian M. Gibson worked on a lot of the interior for it. Who do you recall off the top of your head who did the cover art for it? Because it is stunningly beautiful.
I do. He's a friend of mine, Jeff Brown. For those of you
Oh,
who are looking into indie books or in the indie sphere, you're probably very familiar with his work. He's done a ton of stuff for the Broken Binding recently.
oh
He's
yeah.
done. I don't even want to misname. There's like
There's
several
so much. He's
huge series.
everywhere.
Yeah, he's all over the place. But I was very lucky. I found him on a website called Readsy, which is just kind of like a resource for those who are new to the publishing game. And I found him, and I found his work. And this was early 2023, so I think it was for me very lucky just before he kind of blew up big time.
Oh yeah.
And I reached out to him, and he's a fellow Canadian, and I was like, I'd love to work with a Canadian. That'd be awesome. But more
Mm.
importantly, your work is great, and his process was, if you can work with Jeff, it's really second to none. He literally um, did. We talked for, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours. He was live drawing it with me. I went through the plot. I went through the major plot points. He really tries to get an understanding of your book and feel. He did an entire cover, and then both of us looked at it and were like, "That's not right." And he just started again, completely different cover.
Wow.
And he was like, I do not want you paying me. I do not want this going live until you are absolutely happy with it. And on
I
my
love that
website, I have,
dedication.
yeah, no, it's insane, and he knows how good he is too. So like he doesn't want he doesn't want his name on something that isn't top tier.
Yeah.
I assume, actually, I'm ascribing his motives. I don't actually know if that's true, but I would
Hey,
assume.
you have more exposure to him to a lot of us. To most of us, he is just an indie legend at
Yeah,
this point.
exactly. He's in the stratosphere. But, no, Jeff's absolutely amazing, and um, I think I have, so on my website, it's elementsoftime.ca. I'm sure the link will be available as well, but I think I actually have all of the iterations of like the one that we didn't use, and like the scratch pad drawings, and then the iterations of this one, just so you can see the evolution. But the level of detail, I promise I won't spoil anything. And in
Mhm.
fact, we designed the cover so it was only like marginally spoilery. But
If you don't know the story, it's still beautiful. But when you know the story, there's so much depth to that cover.
yeah, there's like little intricacies that I was like, hey, for example, can you make the color of this slightly different for
Mhm.
thematic reasons? And he's like,
Mhm.
sure, I guess. Like he had, there's a sword on the cover, and he had like an kind of more of an ornate hilt, and I was like, make it bronze, make it really subtle. And he's like, okay. So, he just he's phenomenal. So, anyways, I found him. So he did the cover design and the naked. So all of the hardbacks, which are just available at like the standard hardbacks at like Barnes and Noble, any major store, Amazon. They also have the naked cover, so you just get like the pure art. So
I
that's
love
also
that.
different. Yeah.
That art is just so beautiful. I didn't realize it was a Jeff Brown piece because his style is pretty distinct, and like we were saying, he's blown up in the indie space, especially in indie fantasy. It's like you can't throw a rock without seeing one of his covers every other week on social media. I wonder when he sleeps, honestly.
I don't know, but I do. I have seen him work, and
Mhm.
I told him, we were first working together, I was like, you need to film your process, because it's like watching literal magic. Like he's just like moving his hand, and art is appearing in front of you on the screen. So,
Oh,
but I don't know when he
that is
sleeps.
so
I don't know what his schedule is, because it must be insane.
all right. But this episode is about you, not Jeff
Yes,
Brown.
sorry,
So
yeah, sorry, Jeff.
let's move on. No,
Yeah.
it's not your fault. I'm geeking out over it too. But back to the subject at hand,
Yes.
which is you and your book. You said it took you like a long time, like 10 years,
Yeah.
to really get into that process. Um, what were the barriers that you were running into that made the process take so long?
I would say not even, I don't know if barrier is the right word, but really it was just developing the skill set. So like I wrote the first draft of this book, and my kind of pledge slash joke is like, if I ever it becomes the next Harry Potter and I'm like, you know, incredibly well off from this book, I will release the first ever draft, to show you that like anyone can do this, in the sense that it just takes grit and determination. Because I wrote 300 pages of the worst garbage that has ever been put to paper. Just none of it made any. It was a series of, it was like 150,000 words of and then this happened, basically. And I was like this cocky 22-year-old being like, oh, I'm gonna write a book in a month, and I sat down every day and I wrote it, but there was just no through line except for the characters having the same names throughout. There was nothing that kind of tied the story together any meaningful way. And so I thought it was like the coolest guy in the world, and I'm like, just knock this out. I can do this forever. And I went to one writing class, and it was like a workshop, and I read some of the other people's work, and I was like, oh, I do not know what I'm doing at all, at all. So it was really a process of just putting the hours in it. And I think I mean, I wrote 1.5 million words of this book before I felt that it was at the level that I wanted it to be at. And I was really determined to make it the best possible book that I could make it, to the level of skill that I was capable of within reason. Like there's a certain point where you can just write forever and keep rewriting. But for example, the beginning I wrote at least 10 different times. Like the first 100 pages, I wrote at least 10 times, from scratch, just completely destroyed it and rewrote it, because I knew where the story was going, but I couldn't figure out how to set it up. And it's so grounded at the beginning in reality that I needed it to feel like two kids from, you know, middle of like just general Earth City, and like generic enough that you could understand them and know them, and grounded enough that you could really understand their characters, because it's so important to the theme of the novel that they are truly taken away from what is normal life, and that you understand why they do that and why they go and what their conflicts are and all those things. So really, the process was me, just honing my swords for over and over and over and over. And even between draft 6 and 7, so this is draft 7 is the final draft, I took it to an editor, and it was 265,000 words. And I read through all her notes, and she was actually, I think it was the Adrian Tchaikovsky's editor for the Children of Time. She did that book as well. And so I was like, I'm going to listen to what you say, because you clearly know what you're doing. And I was able to cut out 30,000 words, by just like saying, okay, let me be ruthless with this. How can I make this sharper? If I can cut out 5 words a page, then I will do that. So really just, and this was my 20s, so I had the time back then. Like now I've got a wife and a kid and a dog and, you know, a job and a mortgage and responsibilities. But at the time, it was like literally every Sunday for 8 hours, I would just sit down and write. And it was learning the process and learning the skill set. That's what took so long.
So what made you start to feel like you were ready to finally push this out? Like eventually you stopped working on it on yourself and you reached out to other people with like an editor and stuff like that. What was that mind shift?
I think I got probably around draft 4 or 5, which was chronologically around 2020. I remember because it was during the beginning of COVID, so that's kind of around the right period. I finished a draft and I was like, okay, this feels strong enough. I know the characters well enough. I know that. So the plot, you've read the book, fairly
Yes.
intricate.
Yes, it's a dense book. A lot happens.
So once I knew at least like all of the lines were connected in such a way that I wanted to make it airtight, but once I knew it was at least watertight, I was like, okay, this is good enough to show people, and get solid feedback on, because I'm going to need real feedback to know if I'm heading in the right direction. So I think I got beta readers. This is how little I knew about the industry, and how few connections I got. I got beta readers on like Fiverr and Upwork.
Mm-hmm.
because I just like didn't know. I was like, I want to find people I don't know to beta read it, and I got really solid feedback, both in the sense of like, did people enjoy it, which was my number. I was like, I know this isn't perfect, but did you enjoy reading this, or am I just wasting time? And then
Yeah.
number two on like the critical plot points. Um, and once I got that feedback, I thought I was ready to publish, and then realized, you know what, this isn't where I need it to be. So I kind of went at it again and really committed myself to it. Um, and most of it was the beginning, was really figuring out the beginning, like the first
Mm-hmm.
10 or so chapters, let's say. And making and kind of went through the whole thing again. And then I did that process maybe once or twice. I don't remember exactly. And then at that point, I was like, okay, it was probably 2022. Now final push. Now I take it to a proper editor. I spend the money, I spend the time, I get a professional to look at this. I've spent 10 years of my life. I'm going to do this right. And that's when I took it to my editor. And because I was like, this is draft 6. This is almost 300,000 words. This is the last one. And she came back being like, really high quality, writing and world. However, there's these technical issues that you need to fix. And this chapter is too long, it's redundant, and you're switching. A big problem I had early on, huge problem, was switching point of views mid chapter.
Mm.
And I've got like 20 plus point of views. Like there's a lot.
There's a lot of people that we get a little bit in their head because it's a very wide cast of characters, and they're all very unique and very interesting. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, and my issue early on was thematically. So it's a I guess I don't know what you call like a deutagonist. Like there's two protagonists that are equally important. And early on, thematically, I'm like, oh, if I write chapters from both of their perspectives, then that's a cool thing to do. Like it's meta. And it took me a million words to figure out that just wasn't the best way to start the story. So
That sounds difficult.
it was difficult and it was sloppy too, right? Like
Mm.
it's not it. So my brain works visually. Like when I'm writing a scene, I think about what it looks like. And not in a TV show or a movie, you can do multiple. In fact, you have to do multiple point of views in a scene, right? Because the camera is the eye of the audience. But in a book, especially if you're writing third person, definitely if you're writing first person, obviously you're staying in that point of view. But if you're writing third person omniscient, um, the reader's imagination is the lens. So you have to ground them very quickly in where you are and whose eyes you're looking through. And so a lot of editing from draft 6 to 7 to the final draft was, this chapter is great, choose a POV and stick to it. And it's like, okay, well, I have to tweak 20% of the chapter, which means almost rewriting it, right? So that kind of technical stuff, which really elevated my writing, and again allowed me to take out 35,000 words, which is like for some people a full book that I just deleted deleted out of my book.
There's really a great feeling of taking a story and giving it to someone, especially a professional editor, and they come back to you like, "Hey, this has got great bones, and you got something here, but this is how we're gonna make it special." And I just love that feedback. I'm in that process right now with my editor, and then sometimes I'll get a chapter back and it is just red.
Yeah.
But by the time I'm done with it, I'm like, "Oh, thank God. This is so much better. Thank you. You've saved me."
Totally. And I mean, that's being able to take, there's a fine line in taking feedback too, and I'm sure you've
Yeah.
experienced this, where it's like, especially when you put so much heart and soul into something and someone's like, and you're like, oh, you don't get it, you're not seeing the vision. But you
Yeah.
have to be able to, you kind of have to be half crazy enough to believe that you're the next like Tolkien to actually write anything. But then you also have to be humble enough to be like, you're probably right. Like this,
Yeah.
my rule of thumb early on was like, if two people said the same thing, I would take notice. If three people said something, then I would actually try to change it within reason.
Ooh. Did you pull that from writing about dragons and shit?
No, but it's
Ah,
such a common,
yeah.
like, I'm sure whoever told me probably
I
took it.
don't know where it originated. That's just where I
Yeah.
heard it from. B. Dave Walters.
Okay.
He was talking about it on that show. If you haven't heard of that podcast, check it out. It's pretty great. It's just three people. Two of them are professional writers, and one who is not. He is aspiring to be, and they just talk about writing, and it's mostly about sci-fi and fantasy because they're nerdy people. And there's a lot of like great writing lessons on it. I would definitely encourage people to check it out. But for your journey, that's a long time, and really digging into that. At what point did you start to feel like, okay, I'm not just a writer, I am an author? Like, when was that moment for you?
I think probably after publishing, like
Yeah.
a little, yeah, because especially in the self-publishing world, less so now. People are more curious now, and when you can be like, um, I'm in Canada, so Indigo is like the Barnes and Noble up here. But when you can be
Okay.
like, oh yeah, my book is in Indigo or whatever, people are like, oh, okay, so you're like, because I think people assume like you're writing like a blog or something.
Yeah,
Until
it legitimizes you to
yeah,
have your book at a store.
exactly. So, I think post probably a couple months after publishing, when people were actually buying the book and telling me unsolicited, like, oh, like I read your book and I really enjoyed it. Um, and not because I was particularly, yeah, it's an incredible feeling, like just for you to make art and someone to like your art is kind of wild. But not um not because of the feedback per se in and of itself, which is always lovely to hear positive feedback, but in the fact that I think people are surprised when you say you've written a book. First of all, so many people have been like, "Oh, I started writing a book" or whatever, and then they're even more surprised when they like it and they're like, "Oh, you actually are good at this. I didn't know that was a skill you had," because writing is such a, for lack of a better term, private skill, right? Like it's not like playing music or painting or what have you, where I, I mean, I don't know how often people are painting in front of groups of people, but if you paint a picture, you could put it up in your house basically immediately, and people are like, ah, art. But with writing, you're kind of like in this dark room and you're this little gremlin over your keyboard, and or maybe you're in a well lit room, with a cup of coffee or whatever, but it's very innately private, and then even the act of sharing it is also private, because when you're reading, that's a private act, right? Like even if you're on the bus or something reading, it's your voice in your head with your book, unless you're for some reason blasting an audiobook, like in public transit, in which case you're,
Which bold move.
yeah, really sharing it with the world. But so there's an intimacy about writing as a medium, and I think it was when people were like, "Hey, I read your book. I really enjoyed it." Even my own family, who I told very early on, I was like, "Because your family is going to be nice," and they're like, "Oh, can I read your book or whatever?" And I'm like, "I don't want you reading this until you're prepared to actually read the entire thing." Because for me personally, the most frustrating, it's such a, now obviously not as much, but such a labor to share your work with someone, especially unfinished work. And then once you do, all you want is feedback. All you want in the entire world, you send that email and you're like, okay, are you done reading it? It's been 8 minutes. Like, let's talk about it.
Yeah,
Um,
you want that immediate and honest feedback. Like, you don't want it to be sugar coated. Like, it sometimes it's nice to have a cheerleader, but you want people to tell you like, "Hey, is it actually good? Is it bad? Where can I make it better? Where did I do it too much?" Like,
exactly.
you
Yeah,
want to improve. You want to be good.
for sure. And
Yeah.
then when that honest feedback is like, oh, wow, like Sam, I didn't actually know that you were this good at, and I should clarify for the audience, I do not think I'm the greatest writer in the world. There are definitely authors who are better than I am. But the generic bar of like, this story, I enjoyed it, it made sense, and it's something and it resonated for me. Um, at that point is when I was like, okay, I think I can call myself an author. I think I've earned that title.
I feel like finishing a book is such an exclusive club because, like you were saying, there are so many people that try, and there's a lot of people that try 3 4 times before they finally complete a book. Like, you, that alone is just such a huge accomplishment that anybody who does it should be proud for that, and at least that. and everything beyond that is just sugar. It's just icing on the cake. So you talked about this a little bit earlier in your introduction, and the book definitely wears some of its inspirations on its sleeve. But what in particular really drew yourself to write this story? Like, what stories inspired it? You talked a little bit about like some animations, some video games, some books, some movies. Which one of those really dug into it for you?
Totally. So I am I am the worst example of an author when you're like, oh, like, who are your inspirations? What books do you read? I was not a reader growing up, but I was obsessed with movies and television. I was born in 1992, and like, I will watch anything from like the 80s or 90s or early 2000s over anything made in the last decade in an instant, even if I've seen it 100 times. Like, it just resonates with me, and there's something about the like vintage style of it, and part of it's nostalgia and part of it's just the type of storytelling. But my and part of the reason I didn't read growing up is because I was just like good at school, and so the teachers were like, oh, you should read books, because that was their natural inclination. I was like, well, now I'm not going to read anything, so
yeah. Don't push me to do it.
Yeah. So I mean, my major inspirations, and for those who have read the book, this will be very obvious if you're familiar with these, but one of them is Avatar: The Last Airbender. There's an elemental magic system. I have, since I was a kid, been obsessed with elemental magic systems. I don't know why. Like the fire, water, earth, air, Greek elementals. I was like, I need to write a book. I need to write a story using that as a basis. So, very integrated into the lore, the world, the magic system. There's another mechanic that you see at the end of the book, which I will not say, but you probably know what I'm referring to. And I also wanted to work in. It's actually one of the biggest inspirations that I never talk about, because it'll give people hints as to where the book is going. And so, but I knew I wanted to use another mechanic, and that mechanic makes everything else much trickier. So I had to. A lot of the time was spent making that plot airtight, and the themes and everything about it airtight. But the major inspirations: Avatar: The Last Airbender for sure, the original Star Wars trilogy, and the you can see big Jedi overtones in the Prolia and a lot of the characters. Um, and then Stargate SG-1, which I think is like criminally underrated, but I took a ton of inspiration from thematic inspiration and character inspiration. In fact, if you listen to the audiobooks, I'm not sure if you yourself have ever watched SG-1.
I'm a big audiobook person. That is how I consumed your book as well.
I don't know if you've watched SG-1, but
the movie or the show?
The show.
Okay. I've watched the movie. I've caught like a few episodes of the show, and I know I'm gonna get to that classic adventure at some point, especially like Stargate Atlantis and stuff like that. But right now I'm still working my way through all the not ancient, but the Star Treks that I've never seen before.
No, well, listen, when you get there, so the Sophoris, who's a major character in the book, I literally told the voice actor, I was like, he's based off of this character in SG-1. Don't mimic the voice, but that's your inspiration. So
that's great.
Did a great job. It's just like a very like stoic warrior, not poet, but like kind of wounded warrior
scholar kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. He's great. A great character.
Yeah, I like it. Very, very fun to write wise characters, because you get to like deep dig into the back of your brain, where it's like, when you always know the right thing to do, but you just never want to do it. But then that character actually gets to do all the right things. So those are fun characters to write. But, and then the last one's Supernatural. I just adored that show growing up. The first 5 seasons is where the inspiration comes from. The rest of it is...
That's where you should stop. Like, yeah, exactly. That is definitely where you should stop.
Like 10 seconds before the last episode of season 5 ends, and you're good to go.
That's all you need to know. You're done. The show ended there.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the the tightness of that show and the kind of brotherly nature and a lot of the symbology between like the angels and the conflict and Lucifer and all of that kind of stuff. Those were the main four inspirations, and I think
Mhm.
anyone who likes those media will like the book. I hope, otherwise it would be weird.
No, I think those are good comps. Like if you are into these four things, you're gonna love this. I think that's very true. Yeah, the world building is absolutely fantastic in there, and like I've said a few times, it's like it's dense. There's a lot happening, but it all makes sense. I think that is a testament to your dedication over a decade. Is that there's a lot happening here, but every time something new is being introduced, it's like, oh yeah, that fits right here in this puzzle of this universe, and it makes sense with everything around it.
I'm glad that that's that's the end result, because that was definitely the goal.
Oh no, that's absolutely excellent. I God, the thing that sticks with me the most is the difference between people who are made of the the entities of space and the entities of time.
Yes.
And I'm not going to dig too much into that because I don't want to reveal things. But when you introduce that into the book, that's when it's hit me like, whoa, this guy is onto some unique things that are really pushing this story.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of research. What I tried, so I call the book science fantasy because it's obviously a fantasy. Like there's literal magic. But I did try to tie as much as possible, similar to how sci-fi kind of takes an idea and stretches it. Star Trek was really good at this back in the day. TNG, the Orville was really good at it. I mean, any sci-fi that you can point to, Stargate, and takes an idea and teases it outwards and says like, well, what if this went to its logical conclusion, and what lessons can we draw from that? And I tried to do something similar in my world and did a fair amount of research. Now, I'm not an academic. Like, I don't study, astrophysics or anything in my spare time, except for what I'm about to tell you. But I tried to tie as many, I guess, theories about the universe in terms of, how does gravity work, and how does space and time correlate to one another, and what's our understanding of those things, and develop that into a magic system and world where even things like vacuum energy, which I'm probably misremembering, or dark matter or what have you, and building that subtly into the universe, which isn't really explored in world in book one, I should say, um, and as much philosophy as I could as well. What does it mean if you're a being of pure time, and what is your lifespan, and how do you interact on a plane of a mortal plane, and not just the way that people look at, like, oh well, there's gods and there's mortals, but it's like, what does that mean? How can we explore that? And how can the human mind then conceptualize that, and work backwards? And I explored a lot of that in the prequel novella as well, which was very difficult to write because I was writing from the perspective of a being of pure time. And what does that realm look like? What does a realm of pure space look like? And then how can I conceptualize that in my own brain and also write it for an audience that doesn't have 10 years to think about these things? So the world building became very intricate, but I'm really happy with where it all turned out from a writing perspective and also a philosophical.
This interview is perfectly timed because I am just neck deep in very similar research right now as I'm like world building my second book while my first one is off at the editor. And it is just digging into like gravity and time and space time and what does that mean when you bend it and everything. It's so intricate, and then trying to figure out how to concisely explain that in a story where it's easily consumable to someone who's not doing that research. Like, that is a challenge. It is a massive hill, and I think you did a great job with that. Have you read the Licanius trilogy by James Islington.
You are the second person in a week to ask me that, and I have not.
Oh my
But it's
God.
now on my TBR because, like I said, if two people say it, then you gotta pay attention to it.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. It's a phenomenal book that mixes uh, a lot of those elements that we're talking about into what otherwise would feel like a traditional fantasy setting.
okay,
And it's phenomenal. It's a great job. Like it
um,
might start off a little slow, but stick with the trilogy. It's so good.
then definitely will be on the top of my TBR. Because literally someone else just finished my book, and that was the first question they've asked, and I was like, I've never even heard of it. I'm such a bad like author in the sense that like I just don't
Yeah.
know books as well as I probably should. But most of my quote unquote reading, like I said, I've got a kid, I've got a mortgage, I've got a whole bunch of stuff. I just do
Yeah.
audiobooks now. So if it's on audiobooks, I can crush it in like 3 days.
Oh,
Um,
100%. Like,
so
I have a very small stack of physical books right here,
yeah,
and everything else I do is audio. And even if I get like a book that I really enjoy, I get the audio book because it's just so much easier to consume a book when I can do my chores and mow my lawn and work out or do whatever I need to do
yeah.
during the day. We're busy people, we have busy lives. Don't feel bad about doing it via audiobook.
No, I consider physical books like legitimate trophies. Like, have I earned the right to own this book physically?
Yep.
Do I then I will buy it and happily put it on my shelf. I'll do the exact same thing. Like if I love a book, like some of my indie friends' books, like I'll listen to them on audiobook and then buy the physical. Number one to support them, and number two, it's like that's a trophy. I've earned this book. It's going on my shelf.
Yeah.
That and also I don't have endless space. You saw this before the interview, but I'm in a very small room right now. So.
No, I feel you. So I just recently in the last like few months, I moved to this house. And it's the biggest place I ever lived. Before this, I lived in a condo that was like less than 1,000 square feet, with like myself, my wife, my two dogs, and my cat. There was not room for books and shelves and stuff like that. And now I have this big old corner that I'm going to fill with
Yeah, fill it
everything, and
up.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, there you go.
You just got to build it up. So we'll get there.
100%.
Uh, But bringing us back onto the subject, you mentioned this earlier a few times. So you are not a full time author. You have a regular job. You have like obligations of like your wife, your home. You are now a father. There's a lot going on. How do you fit writing into your busy regular life?
Yeah, that's an incredibly difficult balance. And the short answer is that it comes in waves. And so, like, I last year had an incredibly busy year. I had 6 weddings, all of which I was in.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
and
Tell
that
your friends to stop
included,
getting married.
well, thankfully they're done.
Thank
I
goodness.
only have 8 friends, and 6 of them got married. So that was a bunch of weddings and then a bunch of bachelor parties, which basically eliminated a quarter of the year in terms of weekends. Like literally was done. And my wife was pregnant. Like we knew in January that we were having a kid in September, so I had a hard clock in terms of what I could get done. And I decided, oh, yeah, so I exactly. So I knew like, okay, this is my timeline. And then a whole bunch of work obligations and just regular life stuff. And so 2024 was like, okay, I want to publish something. And so I decided to publish the novella. And the novella is, I will show you a comparison. So this is the paperback of The Winds of Change. And this is the hardback of the novella. So I
Sorry, that is
um
more comical than I expected
yeah.
it to be.
I very intentionally, it's about 70 pages, and I very intentionally wrote that story as a prequel novella because number one, in in a rare form for a prequel, it actually doesn't, like, you don't know where it's going. I mean, you kind of know where it's ending, but it's a character that you don't even see in book one. Who is so for your reference, for anyone who's listening who might have read the book, it's the one keeper who's not in book one. So one of these beings of time, and what it really is, it's both a lore and world building book that happens hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of years before book one even takes place. So it has I mean, I've got such rich lore to dive into. And I was like, okay, I can write a really interesting story that's a great supplement for anyone who hasn't read the book, a great intro for anyone who's interested in the book, and a really unique style that will allow me to write relatively quickly while capturing a whole story. I'm, as you can see by the size of this book, don't tend to write short very well. So I needed something that I could write in like 2 months and publish and do all that work. So for those of you who are curious, the way I was able to do that is it's actually a series of journal entries. So it's called Pasha's Hidden Journals. And because it's a series of journal entries, it allowed me significantly more flexibility in writing style and quote unquote chapter length, right? It was very different. It was a completely different style than I'm used to, but I was able to write 1,000 words into a journal entry or 500 words and progress the story. And I didn't have to worry that much about setting or character or whatever. And so that was a strategic use of time. And then I knew I only had basically 3 months of all of 2024 to write. So I wrote that entire book and published it and got it out there. And I was like, okay, that's this time. And then I ran a Kickstarter in August of that year. And I, by the way, don't recommend running a Kickstarter 3 weeks before your daughter's born. That's not a good mix.
Not a good look.
Yeah. Well, it was not even like the visually, but just in terms of timing, it was very difficult to actually do everything. But so I knew like segments of the year were going to be devoted to other massive projects. And then my daughter was born in September. And I was like, well, I'm actively not planning on doing anything but taking care of this baby for the next, I don't know, 60 years of my life. But 3 months, realistically, 3 to 6 months. I'm the first time dad. I don't know what's going on. And then coming into this year, it was like, okay, these months are getting used to being a dad. These months are fulfilling Kickstarter. Now that the Kickstarter's done, I've got the last quarter of the year to really focus on writing. And then, so just planning out, being really intentional with the planning, and understanding kind of where to sacrifice and where not to sacrifice. And if it means, helping the wife and helping the daughter and not writing, then at this point in my life, that's a sacrifice I'm going to make. And then as things shift, other things will take over. So for me, what it means is kind of being really intentional in writing in spurts. And now that things are normalizing, finding that routine again where I can really get back into it and dedicate the right time.
No, that's a really good, really well thought out answer. Like, I appreciate the honesty in it, because there's so many times in writing where like we feel guilty for not doing it, and just being able to look at yourself and be like, hey, while this is a big part of me, this is not the most important thing right now. And really being able to recognize and prioritize that is fantastic. But we are at a good stopping point. That is a great answer to the question. We're going to have to start wrapping it up so that we can get you going on the next episode. But please, could you tell the people, 1, where can they find you? 2, where can they find your books? And what are you working on right now?
Totally. You can find me. All my socials are S Paisley Author, Spaisley Author. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. So when I say all my socials, it's just those two, or X. And my website is elementsoftime.ca. That's the series name. That's going to be the hub for probably all of my writing, but definitely this series going forward. And you can find all of the books there, the special editions while they last, the prequel, the paperback, signed, all that kind of stuff, on Amazon. Any major retailer usually has the hardcovers as well. What am I working on now is diving hard into book 2. So I'm a good chunk of the way through the first draft. And really my goal is just to buckle down. People have been asking for it. And unfortunately, books of these length take a lot of time. But yeah, buckling down and writing it to the best of my ability. And if that means 2 drafts, 3 drafts, 4 drafts, 5 drafts, I hope it doesn't. But that's kind of the plan for the foreseeable future.
Well, I'm sure you're taking all the lessons that you learned in the decade for the first book and applying it to the second one. But Sam, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Really appreciate you coming on here. Excuse me. But yes, stay tuned for next week's episode. We're going to have Sam back here. We're going to be digging into some really heartfelt stuff about stories. But until next time, remember, let's be author adjacent together. See you, folks. Ah, dude, excellent episode. You did phenomenal.